the best of Larry Nixon, your guide to tips on better bass fishing, with one of B.A.S.S. leading money winners, Larry Nixon. The sites for today's lessons are in Larry's home state of Arkansas. The first is in northwest Arkansas on the scenic Crooked Creek River, where Larry learned the ABCs of fishing. The second is a small farm pond in north central Arkansas. Let's join Larry today as he discusses a few of the keys to becoming a better fisherman in today's lesson, Back to Basics.
You know, people ask me all the time, just how did you get started bass fishing? You know, being a tournament fisherman, they think that I just started out bass fishing out of a big boat on a man-made lake catching largemouth bass. I grew up on creeks just like this one right here, Crooked Creek in North Arkansas. I waded this creek when I was a kid, and Dad would bring me down here, and this is where I learned how to catch fish. Any kind of fish, and that's one of the most important things in being a good bass fisherman. I don't care if it's a bluegill, a rock bass, largemouth, smallmouth, just any kind of fish. And there's so many times when you go out on a big lake that, you know, you fish and don't catch many fish. So you don't really learn a lot about how to play a fish and where a fish might be. And small creeks, they just make for great places to teach people how to fish and have a good time. Well, I don't know what he is, but he sure is a pulling down there. Oh, that's a little better smallmouth there. Creek smallmouth. Now on light line, them little fish are a ball to catch. Now sometimes when the weather turns off real clear like this, man, it turns real bright and still, or even bright and windy on a day right after a front. A lot of times you'll have to scale down and use a little bitty small lure, like a little 1/8 ounce head with a grub on it. Now that little riverside grub that is just an excellent choice to catch smallmouth, especially in creeks and in places where that water is just extremely clear and they're hard to catch. I mean, now times, boy, I'll throw it out there and just get positioned just right and let that grub drift along, just bumping them rocks. And you'll just be tight lining it and it'll just go thunk. You'll just feel just a thunk, a little sharp peck. Now when you're moving along like we are right here, you notice, boy, we're traveling right along. The current's running down through here pretty hard. What you need to do is just kind of get control of the boat and either use an anchor or trolling motor and hold the nose of that boat so that it slows your drift down, and that way you can just float that bait down through there. Just make you a little cast out there and just kind of let that current just drift him along, bumping them rocks. Just hold that line, just keep your line tight enough that you can just kind of feel it just bumping along downstream. It's not too bad to hang up. A lot of people think you stay hung all the time, but if you feel it just kind of get tight, just pull it up off the rock and just let her drift right along.
When fishing on a bluebird day after a frontal passage, you may have to scale down your lure size and try a much smaller bait than normal. Sometimes this may be the only way to catch fish under these conditions.
Oh, yes. The largemouth are jumping like crazy. Oh, yeah. Whoa here. That's 6-pound test line. He's a mean. Come on up here. Come on up here. Hold still. I see. Yeah, it's not a bad little largemouth for a creek largemouth. I mean, you just can't imagine how many bites I'm getting. I mean, this is just, it's what every fisherman, every beginning fisherman ought to, it's the way you really should start out. I used to ride the bicycle to the creek. Take the rod and reel and put it across the handlebars, ride 5 miles to the creek every day, all summer long. Of course, I wasn't very old then. 14, 15 years old. And back then, kids that young didn't really have jobs, so, you know, that was what I did to kill time. I don't really call it killing time because it's something that I love to do. Didn't bother me to ride that bike all day to fish a couple hours. Whoa, 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 that's a good fish there. That's a good fish. Oh, that's a better one there. And that current, he feels like a hog. Whoa, come here. Did you turn downstream on me? Oh, that's a pretty, that is a genuine Crooked Creek smallmouth. Come here. Come on, I've hunted everywhere for you. Now that is a pretty smallmouth right there. That's a Crooked Creek. A creek average size. I mean, that's a decent one. When they're really biting, that's the kind of smallmouth you'll catch creek fishing. Pretty fish and fight forever. Just never quit. Never quit. Aha. Now here's the problem. Wrong lure. Look at that crawfish right in the back of that stomach. See them features sticking out there? That fish eat good yesterday. That's why they're not biting too good today. They're all full. Poor thing. It's like a T-bone steak to a person. Oh, he had that crawfish down there. Couldn't stand my little grub, though. Sometimes you just gotta swap back and forth, crank a little bit, throw a spinnerbait a little bit, throw your grub a little bit. You find a good stretch that you like, turn around and fish it twice. You know, when I find a place that looks good to me, I'll make a float through it. If I can pull my way back, I'll go back and fish it again. Usually make that second pass with a different lure. Oh, ooh, what have I got here? Another one? Could this be another decent one? I believe it might be. Ooh, he's got me backpedaling, whatever he is. Whoa, come out from under this boat. Come on out here, I believe that's a pretty good one. Whoa, goodness sakes. Easy. I didn't even retie either. Don't you dare break my string. Oh, look at that. Look at that. That is creek fishing. Could be the time of day, you know. Boy, they're just getting fired up now. Come on. Come on, that current's got me. Yeah. Ain't that something? Now that's the way it's supposed to be. About chewed my little grub up. Ain't he pretty? They are fun. They just don't give up.
And now, here's an important Nixon note, courtesy of Berkeley Tri-League, super strong, America's #1 fishing line.
You know, anytime you fish in creeks, small baits are the key. Little grubs, small crankbaits. That's a little Cordell O, one of my favorite baits for fishing in small waters. It's just a little teeny small crankbait. And another good bait that is always good around ponds and creeks is little small red fins or bombers. This is a little teeny small long A. Use that on light tackle and boy, that's a good fish producer anywhere you go. And last but not least, now one of the best producers anywhere you fish is a teeny weeny little spinnerbait. A little 1/8 ounce spinnerbait. That little spinnerbait right there, that Penny King is responsible for me winning a big B.A.S.S tournament. When them fish are feeding on a little bitty small bait, don't be afraid to tie on a little bitty spinnerbait because sometimes that's the only thing you can get them to bite.
And now, here's another important Nixon note, courtesy of low boats. Expect more from your boat.
You know, stock ponds help a fisherman learn how to read water because it's a small piece of water that you can look at. I mean, you've got a dam on that end, and it's pretty well straight in line. And you've got kind of a little corner here, and you've got a little corner over there. To me, that resembles a pocket. That's a corner or a pocket. Then up here on this end, here on this left-hand side, you've got a nice man-made point that's real visible. And then you've got a cove over there and a cove over there. And what that does is once you learn how fish relate to each and every type of shoreline in a pond, you can take that directly to a man-made lake and you'll have the same features and you'll be able to spot them and learn how fish relate to them. And that's one of the hardest things for people. It's not just going out there and casting and catching fish, it's reading water and finding fish. And by fishing small bodies of water like this, I'll tell you right now, it'll really help your fishing. That's a good fish too. I mean a big fish. That is a good one. Big fish. Good grief, that's a good one. Stay on there, baby. That is a good one. Whoa! He like to took the rod away from me. Come here. That's the way you do it. Ain't he a pretty one? That is a pretty fish. That's the kind of bass you catch out of stock ponds that have a good catch and release program where you just catch them and turn them loose. Hit that spinnerbait. Isn't he pretty? Get back out there for somebody else to have fun with. Boy, that was fun. Reminds me of when I was young. Walking the bank and catching fish. There's another one. Oh, that's a little one there. But they're all fun. That's the thing about it. They're all fun. Come here, little feller. Yeah, he thought he had him a minnow. That's what he thought. Little old fish. That's how you get to be a good fisherman, catching fish. Knowing when something hits that bait. You got to catch fish to learn. Come on here, fish. Always think about it. That's the thing. It's the thing about fishing. It doesn't matter whether you're fishing a lake or a pond or a creek or what. Just be a-thinking. You know, is the wind blowing down that direction? Is that why the fish are there? I always just wonder and try to put the puzzle together when I'm done. Takes practice to get good, just like baseball or any other sport. Just go fishing all you can and try to learn something off every trip. Now most of the time pond fishing, that's one thing about pond fishing. Most of the time you want to fish where you can kind of cast parallel to the shoreline. Every now and then you'll be throwing out in the middle because there might be something out there, some kind of cover, rocks, or if it's in the hill country, that might be rock cover, or there could be a brush pile out there under the water, or there could be little underwater grass. But most of the time pond fishing, I fish parallel to the bank. I get to where I can angle my cast down the shore. Something hit it then. I think it was probably a perch. He just knocked it sideways.
When pond fishing from the bank, most of the time you will want to fish parallel to the shoreline as much as possible. Try using a bait such as a small spinnerbait. This bait is ideal for pond fishing, especially for youngsters.
That's one of the few pieces of cover in this pond. You know, a lot of ponds don't have cover in them because after a few years, boy, something just knocked the fire out of it. I got him too. Oh, it feels like that fish hit it twice. Oh, that feels like a good one. Oh, he's about to pull me in the about to get me in the pond. Come here. This is what you call skiing them out on the bank. Now, when I was young, see, that fish is spawned. You can tell he's pretty well spawned. When I was a kid and didn't know any better, I'd get them close to the bank and just take off running up the hill and drag them out on the bank. That is a pretty bass. Pretty bass. Boy, that one got out of here, didn't he? I mean, he took off back for that deep water. Now, see, one of the only small pieces of cover, it don't take a lot. If you've got a favorite stock pond, you should always go down there when you don't have any cover left in it and cut you down a tree or two or a bush or something and plant in there, because they'll set up on cover just like bass in a lake. Spinnerbait, a lot of times you need cover in the water to get them to hit a spinnerbait, unless you can match the size of the bait. You know, remember this, you don't always have to go out on a lake in a big boat to enjoy fishing and learn more about fishing. I sure hope you enjoyed today's show. I really enjoyed doing it. Come back and see me again next week, and I'll make you a better bass fisherman.